Good morning. Let me adjust my volume here. Hold on a second. There we go. All right, so today I'm going to talk to you about the force of family medicine. And it's not just because I won the Star Wars poster in the auction, yes. But I also, in addition to sort of the spiritual force, I want to talk about the real sort of physical force that we can impart on the healthcare system, because we know that we are at a critical juncture in the history of healthcare. And we know that that vector has long favored, vector as in physics, right? That vector has long favored fragmented, volume-based care. But we know that's not right. And how do we move that vector from fragmented and volume-based care to integrated and value-based care? So that's the context within which we're going to be discussing the family medicine revolution. And the other thing that I want you to take away from this is that the more things change, the more we need to keep them the same, and the more we need to resist in order to do that. And I'll be more specific about that in just a little bit. Please, as you are listening to me talk, if you feel so inclined, and I see you smiling or looking at your crotch with your mobile device in said crotch, use these hashtags while you're using that mobile device. Hashtag CAFPASA14, hashtag 2014 year FP, and hashtag FM Revolution. I will not be offended by you looking at your crotch. Thank you. Who am I? I am Jay Lee, and I'm your newly elected president-elect. And I'm really looking forward to working closely with all of you and also with executive leadership to help provide a voice for family physicians and, more importantly, for our patients with the public. I have no disclosures. So, I really like Les Miserables. Do you guys like Les Mis? No? Okay, right. Dr. Benton and I can go do some karaoke a little bit later on. But do you remember the song that Jean Valjean sings in that? Who am I? Right. Who are we? Who are you? Origin stories are really critical, and not just because, you know, I like comic books, right? But origin stories are important because they get to the heart of the answer to the question, who am I? What am I about? And just like superheroes have origin stories, physicians also have an origin story. And that's called the personal statement. So how many of you recently, and I won't define the period of time, how many of you have looked at your personal statement? Raise your hand, please. Okay, so maybe 1/5 of the room has read their personal statement. Now, if you think about what the purpose of that personal statement was, other than something that you had to do to get into medical school, the personal statement served as a roadmap. It serves as a vision statement for what it is that you wanted to become way back when you were 18, 22. So for those that have looked at it, continue to have it by your bedside, whether it's a tattered, papered, typewritten copy, or if it's on your Evernote, on your iPhone, take a look at it. Keep it by your side. And for those who haven't looked at it recently, give it a read. Because we're at a point right now where we're asking this question, who are we? Right? Who am I? What is a family dog? Who is a family dog? What is it that we represent, right? So by that analogy, okay, superheroes, origin stories, physicians, personal statements, origin stories, personal statements, superheroes, physicians. We're superheroes, right? And it's really critical that we know where we came from. We have to know what our kryptonite is. We have to know who our bane is, right? When using some comic book analogies. And not only is it important to know your own story, but I think it's critical that we share that with the public. So just like yesterday and today, we've been talking about what if every member of the Academy gave $100 to the PAC? 115,900 members. That would be the biggest PAC in healthcare. What if all of us started a blog and shared our story and broke Twitter? How powerful would that be, right? If we could get family medicine origin stories up and running. What we've done effectively is we've taken control of our story. I heard at the mic earlier with our legislative session, they this, they that, right? Who is they, right? I think we've long allowed others to tell our story, and it's really our time to be engaged and to tell that story. And I got to say, it was great that the Desert Sun reporter was here yesterday. And for those of you that haven't read it, she wrote an excellent article on this meeting and how important it is for the people in this geographic area. So that leads us to this, which is, become the physician that you wrote about in your personal statement. That's hard, right? Because if you think back to when you were a first or second year medical student, how many forces were out there conspiring against you to stop you from going into primary care? Right? I see a lot of this. And I see some of this, right? This is the hardest thing to do in medical school. It's harder than biochem. It's harder than any of the other, I was going to use a four-letter word, stuff that we had to learn, right, in medical school. Staying true to your values, because you shouldn't be aligning your values with your work. The work should actually be aligning with your values, right? So let me tell a little story. About a year before our second child, my first son, was born, I met a patient who was diagnosed with lung cancer. And she came to my office, and we sat down and we chatted. And I wanted to get a sense of what her values were, because stage 4 lung cancer, prognosis is not good, right? And I got to give credit to the oncologist, because the oncologist said, you need to go see a primary care doctor. So at least one good oncologist in the world, right? And so we sat and we talked about values, and she told me how important it was for her to show her husband that she was going to fight to the end. And she knew about hospice, and she knew about advanced directives and DNR and all this stuff. But for her, at that time, it was critical that she demonstrated that she could fight. For him was kind of the way she described it to me. So fast forward, a year later, she's still alive. And I go out on paternity because my wife started to labor. And as my jar, one of my stones that's very important is family. So it was one of those really magical deliveries, and you all probably know what I'm talking about. You go in, lights are dim, it's quiet except for the incessant beep, 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 and the roll of paper, right, with the labor strip. And, my wife is every 10 minutes, then every 8 minutes, then every 6 minutes, feels the labor pains, and out comes this beautiful boy that, quite frankly, I was like, am I ready to have a second child? Are we going to be able to do this? I was kind of filled with doubt. But at the same time, the doubts go away when you see the child in your hand, right? And so I got very good advice from my colleagues. They said, you could come back sooner, but really you should take the 2 weeks. You should do that. That's important. So thank you, colleagues. I know you're in the audience. And so I did. I took the 2 weeks. I was able to be at home and support my wife and our other child and our new baby boy. At the end of the 2 weeks, I came back to work, and sorry. I received a message that my patient was in the hospital. And so, what did I do? I went to the hospital to see her. And I walked in, and she had immediately, as soon as she saw me, she had a smile on her face. And she didn't look comfortable, She was very tachypneic. You could see her using her accessory muscles. And she smiled at me. That's what she did when I walked in the room. And the first thing out of her mouth that she said to me, "Thank you, doctor, for being here. Thank you for being here." I was involved in her care, but really she was in the ICU for her wishes. She wanted everything done at that point. And the next thing that she said to me surprised the heck out of me. She said, "I want to see a picture of your son." So what did I do? I didn't pull out my wallet with the photos like that. I pulled out my iPhone 3G back then. And I showed her pictures of my son, of my family. Then she gave me the phone back, and for the second time she said, "Thank you for being here." At which point, then she said, "I'm ready. I'm ready." And then we went through the discussion, and we talked about sort of the nature of where she is. And she understood, and she didn't want to be intubated, and we had a discussion with the husband, and we laid her to rest a couple hours later. This story is not unique. It's unique because I'm standing in front of you and I have a presentation. But all of you have stories like this. Imagine 115,900 members. If we each told a story like that in the public space, how powerful would that be? We keep those stories inside, but if we shared it and exposed ourselves and took a risk of showing emotion on stage, right? How powerful would that be? So this is not just somebody who got a memo to wear a tan suit with me on stage. This is me in 2012 with G. Gale Stevens. How many of you know who G. Gale Stevens is in the audience? So G. Gale Stevens was what I call Family Medicine Revolution's OG. Right? He was the original guy, let's use that word, who wrote about this concept of family medicine as counterculture. That we were very different from the rest of the medical establishment, that it's actually our purpose in the healthcare space to resist and to create change and to be disruptors. And he wrote about this in the 70s. Okay? And here we are, years later, and he unfortunately passed away at the end of February of this year. But I had the opportunity to invite him to speak at the 2012 National Conference of Special Constituencies, which I had the honor of chairing that year. And for those of you that knew him, he had this amazing ability to distill down into very few words what it is that's important. And what I took away from his speech that day were these three things. One is, it's not about what we do as family physicians. It's about who we are. And who we are is we're there for our patients. We are there for our patients. When I walked into the ICU to go see my patient, she knew that. She knew that I was there for her. You can't fake being there for your patient. It's impossible. They can read through your BS just like when I tell my kids, it'll be in another minute. They can read through that BS, right? But deeper than that, and kind of inside our soul, kind of what keeps us going is we have to give a damn. And we're at a point right now in healthcare where it's really easy to say, you know what? I don't give a damn anymore. I'm going to go and retire, or I'm going to go and do something else. But the truth is, our patients need us more now than they ever have. That's the truth. Right? This is why I think we talked about generations. I think for the millennials, this is why family medicine is so attractive. In spite of all the issues that we know about primary care delivery in this country and primary care access, there's a mission, and that mission is to give a damn. And that's what we wrote about in our personal statements, right? We wrote about, I really care about patient care and my communities, and I did so many volunteering things, and therefore you should choose me to be a student at your school, right? And the final thing that Jigel said was, it's important to know the difference between your job and your work. And the analogy he gave was when the folks who discovered the snow leopard in the Himalayas, their job was actually to hunt down the Himalayan blue sheep. It wasn't to find the snow leopard. But the work that came out of that was they discovered the snow leopard because the Himalayan blue sheep was the main prey of the snow leopard. So for the first time in documented history, these researchers were able to see this very elusive animal by virtue of their job, but they got to see the work. And likewise, none of us signed up in our personal statements, I want to manage an EMR inbox. I want to fill out paperwork for the betterment of health. No one signed up for that. But what's our work? Our work is that moment when you close the door and you give an opportunity for somebody to tell their story. And frankly, we give an opportunity for people to cry and to laugh and to feel human in front of us. And we have that privilege and that honor and that responsibility to do that. So this brings me to my penultimate slide, which is, we talked about force, and we talked about how, things are changing, but really they need to stay the same. And really, isn't the spirit of who we are as family physicians the be there, the give a damn, the work versus the job? Isn't that spiritually what we are inside? That drives us to go to work every day, to manage our inbox, fill out those papers. So I want to propose that there's a modified version of Newton's second law that we can apply here. So force equals mass times acceleration. F equals m times a, right? We learned this in physics. And in the modern world, we have something called social media. So how many of you are on Facebook? Awesome. How many of you are on Twitter? Okay, fewer. Okay. So Twitter and Facebook, we know, are things that are fun. You know, I can write about roasting red bell peppers in my in my kitchen, or I could talk about being here at this meeting with those hashtags. And you know, for those of you that are looking down at your crotches, that's okay. We love you still. It's okay. But what if we turned this formula around on its head and said, it's not acceleration. It's actually amplification. Because when I like something, then that like gets seen by my community, by the community of people who posted it, and then if a bunch of people like things, then things go, what do we call it, viral, right? What if family medicine went viral? Right? 115,900 members, we each told a story, we posted it on Facebook. What if we all went viral? How powerful would that be? Right? Then there is no they, it's us. We're the ones that are telling our story. And I think there's an opportunity right now for us to do this because we've really built a strong community of folks in the social media space, and we need to continue to be connected, to continue the energy that's generated at this meeting so that it doesn't fade away when we have to deal with managing inboxes and filling out papers, etc. So, because I have to tie this back to the force, I wanted to leave you with a quote from a very wise, very green, very short Master Yoda. And when it comes to applying force and changing that vector from volume, from fragmentation, to integration, to value, to what it is that we know our patients deserve out of the healthcare system, do or do not. There is no try. May the force be with you, and viva la family medicine revolution.